As guitar players, we skip a lot of steps because we get to learn from pre-made charts and graphs. So let's imagine for a second that you didn't have any of those. What do we do with these notes? Well, we have to learn one fundamental concept, which is that the sounds, tones, and emotions of music all come from the spacing between the notes. And as musicians, it's our job to manipulate the spacing to create the sounds that we want. This is a little bit of an odd way of looking at music. You probably haven't had somebody describe it that way to you before, but it's absolutely true. Let's take two notes for an example. Depending on how far apart I space these two notes is going to evoke different types of tonality, sound, and emotion. If these two notes are spaced a single fret apart, what do you think it sounds like? Immediately, I already get sounds of tension, maybe a little bit of anxiousness, something a little unsettling, like it's pushing and pulling me between the two notes. So it should make sense to you, for example, that the soundtrack to the famous movie Jaws is based off of that same sound. And when we identify a spacing, which is also the same thing as a type of sound, we give it a name, and we name it based on the distance that we traveled. So since we traveled 2 frets, this is called a second. As you increase the distance, you change the relationship of the sound. And this might be a little bit confusing, but the original name for intervals was based off of a scale, not necessarily all of the notes in a series, which means as we name things going up, for most versions of our intervals, we'll have 2 different types, a minor interval and a major interval. And for this context, minor means smaller and major means larger. So the smallest interval you can have is called a minor second. But if you go 1 fret farther, you have what we call a major second. And you can see that by pushing the note just by 1 fret, we've drastically changed the quality of the sound. Let's identify a few more intervals and the way that they sound. After your minor second and your major second, the next possible spacing that you have is called a third. There's 2 types of thirds. The first one is called a minor third. And minor thirds are the basis of minor chords. Because when you space notes 3 frets apart, you can hear the minor quality of the sound. Let's swap to this end of the guitar and keep going. After minor thirds, you guessed it, we have major thirds, 1 more fret apart. And yet again, just by nudging the spacing by 1 fret, we have a completely different tonality and relationship. There are names for the distances between 2 notes all the way up to an octave, which is your full set of 12 notes. As your intervals get wider, you'll probably spread them out across a pair of strings. So a major third can also look like this. And we can continue farther after that. If you've kept up with me up till now, it's going to start to get a little bit weirder. Because so far we've been describing our intervals as major and minor. But we have a special set of intervals that we call perfect. And the name basically denotes the nature of the interval. These intervals are stronger and more consonant than the other intervals. Consonant just meaning settled with a strong harmonic resolution. And the fourth, the interval after a major third, is considered a perfect interval. And that would look like this on the guitar. As you're testing your intervals out, remember this. You can practice and experience intervals either harmonically or melodically. A melodic interval is when you play that spacing 1 note at a time. And a harmonic interval is when you play that spacing with both notes at the same time. So a melodic fourth would sound like this. And a harmonic fourth would sound like this. And sometimes when you play them harmonically, it can give you a better feeling of what that spacing is supposed to sound like. You can hear the strong tonal characteristics of this fourth. It's a sound that doesn't have much tension at all. Unlike the seconds and the thirds that we just experienced, which have a lot of tension, color, and vibrance to them, this is more of an uncolored, strong sound. And that's why we call it perfect. Since we don't describe perfect intervals with that major or minor description, when you alter a perfect interval, we have a special term for it. A perfect interval that's raised by 1 fret is called augmented. So it would be fair to call the next interval in line an augmented fourth, which you can hear sounds like the most tension that we've experienced thus far. This might be one of the ugliest sounds in music, but it can be used for beautiful effect. And maybe you've heard this term before, but this is also called a tritone, because it's exactly 3 whole steps up. After our augmented fourth, we get to our next interval, which is called a fifth. And the fifth indeed is a perfect interval. You can hear a lot of the same characteristics as a fourth. It's very settled and inoffensive. It's such a strong sound that you might notice that this is what we call a power chord. Yes, power chords are just perfect fifth intervals, which is why you'll sometimes see power chords labeled as 5 chords. And it's one of the most harmonically strong sounds that we have. I'll make a quick mention that when you take this perfect interval and lower it, it's called diminished because remember, we don't use minor here. So a tritone can be described as either an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth. And while I understand that's very confusing, welcome to music. Let's run through the rest of these a little quicker. After your perfect fifth, you have what's called a minor sixth, which you can hear has that minor tonality, a major sixth, a minor seventh, a major seventh, which has a lot of tension in it, and finally an octave, which is another perfect interval. As a final note, I should mention that the distance between 1 note and itself is called unison, which is also considered a perfect interval. There's lots of ways to use intervals, but even just knowing what they are is a huge step in your music theory knowledge. If you want to know more about intervals and what you can do with them, leave a comment below, and I can make a part 2 to this video.